thanks for joining. I want you to join me in welcoming our special guest, Andrew Arruda, CEO and co-founder of Ross Intelligence.
Thank you.
So Andrew, you weren't watching the Super Bowl last night. You were the halftime show for the Law and Business Student Association conference.
Yeah, it was my first. It was my first halftime show, is what I like to joke yesterday. But I did okay. I was no Lady Gaga, but I essentially told some of the students a little bit more about kind of just the importance of pursuing your dreams, and I also think the awesome opportunities there are out there when you kind of marry what you're most passionate about with what you're doing from a work perspective. And I think that has been something that's carried me through a lot of the challenges of entrepreneurship, as well as just the ups and downs that come. And it's just it's amazing to be back in this space, because I've been lucky enough to travel the world and talk to different groups of people who are interested in legal innovation. And I always tell them that there's a place in Toronto called the Legal Innovation Zone, which has a physical space where people are and companies are being incubated. There's events like this going on, and there are a lot of people from a lot of different places that don't have like this kind of place to come home to. And so I truly feel like I've come home. And you guys have grown so much since when I met you in Hirsch here. There was just kind of furniture coming in, and so it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about your journey, Andrew. You know, it's been how many years now?
4, I think, total.
4 years since you came second in a competition.
Second in a competition.
And last you were the most Googled name in legal tech in North America.
Yeah, that's kind of a fun journey. It doesn't feel like it, and I think the weird thing too continues to be just that feeling of there's so much more to do as a company, and we're just so grateful that we've been able to grow almost alongside the market and almost alongside different communities. And so I've talked to folks this morning here at Liz, and I got so inspired by what the teams are up to. So it's amazing.
Well, tell us we're going to talk about the journey, but tell us where you are now. I know you opened up your development innovation space in Toronto a year and a half ago. But tell us where you are in North America.
Yeah. So for those who might not know exactly what we do, I'll start there. What we do is really solve the problem that lawyers have with research. Common law system, millions of cases, tens of millions of cases. You have to search through all that information to be able to essentially form the basis of your legal arguments. I myself started working at a law firm in my first year of undergrad, a small local Toronto firm. I took night courses so that I could pay my way through school, and a lot of early kind of assignments was things in the research world. And so I think they always say that you kind of are attracted to, you should be solving a problem that you're passionate about, and that problem became very evident to me. And so what happened was I had just finished my articles. I was meeting up with some friends and started to hear about what was happening in Toronto from a machine learning standpoint and natural language processing standpoint, and it just blew my mind. The idea that you could eventually ask a computer system a question in a similar way that you would communicate to a human being and have it find the information you need. And so as a kid, I really got excited about the internet, so I was always kind of a tech nerd in that sense. And I thought of this as kind of the next evolution of technology that would be bigger than the internet. And I was like, wow, this could be something that I get to be a part of. And so ended up founding the company with just 2 amazing human beings. And we've grown the team from there. I think the last 4 years has been quite a wild ride. Where we are now, we're past the Series A stage, so we've announced that we raised about $13 or $14 million. We've grown out the team. I think more importantly from a product perspective, I think for all the entrepreneurs in the space, early days is really tough. You're trying to kind of build your product on a shoestring, and you don't want to overpromise people what it can and can't do. But I'm really proud of where we are. This just a few weeks ago, we launched on our website the ability for anyone to sign up in any practice area in the United States. They can plug in a credit card number, have a 14-day free trial, and we're getting a lot of people who are organically just coming onto our tool, loving it, spending tens of hours in it, and loving it. So it's at that really beautiful time, I think, where a lot of hard work will come now in terms of growth and marketing and the like, but that's what we've been focusing on is getting the product to where it is now and beyond. I know there are some Ross people out there as well, and they know all the fun things that we're building, and are probably like, Andrew, we have so many more challenges to go. I know, but I think you never lose sight of that, and I think it's so much fun that we've been able to get this far and work with some of the top law firms in the world. I was just going to ask that. You have contracts with major law firms. Yeah, so our first few customers were kind of the AmLaw 50 type. The world's largest law firm, Dentons, was one of our first investors, and now we've grown those contracts. Folks have actually doubled, tripled, quadrupled the size of our initial contracts, and we've even gone firm-wide with AmLaw firms, which has been pretty amazing, just to do that in the time we have. But I think as any entrepreneur and anyone who's interested in the space, you're always kind of looking forward to what's next, and we have a bunch of really exciting things planned, and I think part of that in the not so far away future is coming home to Canada with a product, but I'm not making any promises.
Ooh, no announcements tonight?
No announcements. I've been trying to even keep my marketing bone just kind of being a lot more low key, so don't get me started.
Well, I don't think they'd mind if you got started.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about the development center you set up in Toronto. You had the mayor there to join you with the announcement about a year and a half ago?
About a year and a half ago, and that was kind of our originally looked at as going to be our research and development center. Eventually, we were just growing at a rate that was pretty incredible. The talent in the city, I don't have to tell any of you, is just absolutely incredible. And so we decided we moved all of our engineering to Toronto. So Ross is a Canada-built product, which we're very proud of that. And I think that we are really lucky to now start attracting really great people to the team as well. Just this past, at the tail end of 2018, we announced that the former director of engineering from Shopify had joined our team to head up our engineering efforts. And to have someone who's gone through an IPO, built a team out, is something that's really amazing. And so we have our sights on a lot of things in the future. We have a lot of work to do, but it's been really good.
So Canadians developing it, starting it here, move to the States because the market's bigger and maybe the money's freer, but we'll talk about that. And then you bring it back and you're doing all the engineering here.
So that was our original plan. What happened was, even our first ever news piece was in Toronto in the Metro newspaper, and I still to this day remember opening a box. I'll admit it, and just taking all of them. And the headline
you still
was.
Have them?
I do actually. Yeah, absolutely. I do. And the headline there was we were quoted, and Jimo, my co-founder, said we want to build a great Canadian company, and that wasn't something that we were just paying lip service to. So I think one thing that I think is interesting is that we've gone to America, as you highlighted, but we're keeping ourselves very Canadian in this process. And so how it all worked out was we moved to the US to be part of Y Combinator. We went through their summer of 2015 program, and we actually met, you were one of the first people I told about that, with Hirsch out in San Francisco. And I think it was really important for us to build our network there, and to be able to build relationships from a mentoring standpoint as well as from a business standpoint. But our goal was always to then kind of build that up and then have the team kind of grow in Toronto. And so that's what we did. And the mayor was down in Silicon Valley, and we had told him when we started that we were going to do that. And then since we did, he came and cut the ribbon when we opened the office, which was wonderful.
And I know you started with an IBM Watson platform, but you built your own.
Yeah. So the AI space, especially when we started, I think was kind of earlier days. Now I think I saw an ad for a Bowflex that had AI in it. And so I think that could be like the Bowflex rule for oversaturation of a term, jumping the shark as a term. So it's I think, what we saw very early on is that we needed to build a product that was good enough that we could put in the hands of users and then actually hear from them what they wanted and what they didn't want. And using kind of open third-party tools to be able to get and do that was something that we used quite effectively. And then using the the wide network of users we were able to build, we then were able to kind of build up our data set and actually train our system to be able to build all our own infrastructure. So now I'm very proud that Ross is running completely on our own AI platform that we built from the ground up. And we have 30-year researchers who are saying it's saving them 80% of the time that they did on other platforms. But I also think most importantly, they're finding information that they were missing out on those other platforms. So proud that that happened. But it was a deliberate move, and I think sometimes, there's some entrepreneurs in the crowd as well. I think you really want to have to move as fast as you can, and also as lightweight as you can, and that was something we used quite effectively.
So you've been very successful in selling into the legal space. You've got lots of experience, done it internationally. What are some of the challenges, if any, selling to lawyers? And after you answer that, flip it around, and if you were a law firm wondering how to get into the space, get into the innovation space, what would your advice be? So first of all, the challenges.
Yeah, the challenges, I think if you look at the profile of lawyers, they rate highest in skepticism, they rate highest in risk aversion. And so I feel like I'm almost like I can say that because I'm one, you know what I mean? But so there are big challenges that you don't typically see. I also think that it wasn't a space that traditionally had an emphasis on R&D and tech bets. So I'd say the biggest challenge is that not only do you have to sell your product, you also have to educate the market as well as educate the potential buyer. So you're kind of doing 3 jobs in one, where you have to ensure that, a lot of the time technology wasn't really purchased by large law firms, and if they were doing more kind of large scale, more old school kind of implementations. And so even the way that they approach new young products, I think, is with here's a 60-page security questionnaire, here's this, here's that, and then we'll talk in 6 months, and you're like, I need to get this deal done tomorrow. So you're up against long sales cycles, you're up against buyers who potentially don't really even have a process, so you're almost having to give them the process. But I think ultimately it's not all doom and gloom, and one thing that we've kind of done a good enough job, and we're improving every day, is we see that as a tremendous opportunity, because you can complain about that, but it also gives you as an entrepreneur in the space a lot of leeway to say, hey, okay, so this is how you buy the product, this is what generally works, this is what doesn't, and if you come to the table with a good kind of preparation and a good process laid out, you can find success in it. So I think that almost kind of dovetails into, as a law firm, I think what you want to do is come at this with an attitude that you will make mistakes. And that, I think, is a really big challenge for folks, is like, they want to pick the best platform. They want to, this is not a mistake-making culture. And I think law firms need to have this, we're going to move fast, things are going to break. You obviously don't want to take risks that, put client information at risk at all. But I mean, hey, this month we're going to try this platform and this platform. We're going to see what works. Then we're going to have a conversation as to the strengths of those platforms, the weaknesses of it, etc. What I generally find still happening is kind of more digital alibis occurring from a law firm level. So they now know that it's important that they have to talk about being innovative, and they're talking about it, which is the first step to being innovative. And then you have like a chief innovation officer, etc. But it's almost like there isn't any other infrastructure built up behind that. So you just demo a product, and then it's like, we'll talk to you in 6 months. So you need a plan.
Well, there have been a number of articles that have come out that have spoken in law and generally about how more and more are speaking about innovation. Not as many are actually doing it.
Yeah.
So what are the risks in the legal space for those who are not yet doing it?
Well, I almost feel like some of those chief innovation officers and innovation efforts at law firms are almost doomed from the start in many ways, because they task a person or a small team with almost an impossible mission. Because you're saying, we need to innovate as a multi-decade-old, 100-year-old firm. You're going to be the one to do it. You don't really have a budget, and you don't really have a process, and I'm not really giving you a plan. And so I think that that's hard. And so because of that, when you look at things from that perspective as an entrepreneur in the space, instead of me and us getting upset about that, we are now being like, okay, That's what we're working with. But again, that's a tremendous opportunity because you can now become more of the trusted advisor to those folks and actually educate them on the market, have a conversation, talk about other tools in the space as well, and give them that layout. And then they'll be much more open to actually then purchasing your product. So I think kind of turning that around. Now, to address your real question is, are we still in a situation where there's more talk about innovation than real innovation? Probably. That being said, I don't think you can discount what's happening because you're seeing law firms genuinely try and they just don't know what to do right now. A lot of them are kind of in like a, what do we do now? And it's kind of a weird time for them. They're in a transitional period. And so I think it's up to us as a community to step in and educate them and help them rather than just be like, look, they're not doing anything. This is all kind of BS. You know, okay, well, how can we help there? And how can we kind of get behind it?
Put your entrepreneur's hat on for a moment. Think of the economic opportunity. You've set up your development center, your engineering center here in Canada, in Toronto, home of the Maple Leafs.
Go Leafs, go.
And does Toronto have an opportunity to lead? Does Canada have the opportunity to lead? Where else in the world do you see leadership?
100%. I'd say Canada and Toronto, and it's not, I'm obviously biased, I'm a Toronto kind of born and raised guy, and we're sitting at the Legal Innovation Zone. But I do.
Right answer.
Yeah. That being said, though, we are sitting at something called the Legal Innovation Zone, where, you know, I was here not too long ago, and the Attorney General Office of Ontario helped award $80,000 to startups using AI in the legal space. That concept and hearing that, when I tell people around the world that, it like shatters their mind. You know, they're like, wait a minute, what? And so I think, I actually would say that the Legal Innovation Zone is certainly kind of the leader in this and what has happened here. Other places that I'm seeing really great innovation, Singapore is doing some really amazing things. I think that they have a really great alignment between government, kind of law firm, and the entrepreneurship community and the entrepreneurs generally. So startups are working very closely with all levels, and they're also coming together around certain spaces. So I'd say Singapore is almost the closest I've seen, and I think that they're doing amazing stuff. And I also think in the United States, in different pockets, you're seeing really great innovation. So I do think we're now entering this really amazing golden age for legal innovation and legal technology. I do think we're also going to hit a bit of a trough of, you know, disillusionment a little bit as well, because I do think, to take a bit of a controversial stand, we do see early entrance to the space. There's very low kind of barriers to entry. And as the space matures, you're going to see additional seasoned entrepreneurs enter the space. And what it means to get involved in legal technology, or the stakes are going to go up. And I think that's going to be a really amazing thing. And for the folks in the space early, you can kind of help be the leaders. But you're already seeing folks like Justin Kahn, who started a firm called Atrium. His previous company was Twitch. He sold that to Amazon for $1 billion with a B. And now he's in legal technology. So billion with a B. And that's so those are the type of entrepreneurs that are coming into the space. And so I think it's really great to see, because that means we're going to have to be, as a community, more mature. And we can't all just be simple fans. We're going to have to hold all of each other accountable. And I think we're entering into like some pretty amazing times where it's like it's getting real.
And last question or area before we get a demo.
Yeah.
And then take some questions. I know there are a number of regulators in the space.
Yeah.
England, Wales, they've deregulated to a substantial extent, the legal profession. Not happened in Canada or the United States. Do you see any indications that you can talk about that things might be changing anywhere?
So not speaking in any official capacity of any groups that I belong to, because I'm working with certain government agencies that have been publicized, and I don't speak for them. But I do think that there has been an openness towards deregulation in this space, particularly around alternative business solutions and multidisciplinary practices. And I see that as, just for folks who might not be familiar with what that would look like, it would be, you know, having non-lawyer ownership in a law firm, and having them be able to invest and grow financially from being in law and operating in law. And then alternative business solutions is kind of a more kind of general approach where you can have engineers, lawyers, architects all under the same umbrella. I think that Personally, I think that's a really good idea. I think that we need to have regulation around that, and I think the idea of protecting the consumer of legal services is a really important thing, and not just something that we can overlook. But I think that as England has proven to us, you know, the world didn't come to an end, and people who weren't lawyers were able to maintain ethical duties, and they haven't. I've spoken to a lot of the leaders who were involved in that switch, and they have seen no change in kind of complaints from an ethics perspective from those providers, any more or less than they did from lawyers who were in the space. And I do think, I know I'm gonna do the demo and we'll probably open up for questions, but I do think that part of the trouble around legal innovation and the trouble that we have as a community is that there are engineers in this room, there are lawyers in this room, there are folks from law firms, there are regulators, and I think we all need to start collaborating more and working together as one. And I think from the engineers, like, you know, that whole non-lawyer type approach to things is hard to even then spitball ideas and try to launch a tool within the space. And so you still see a lot of entrepreneurs in this space are former lawyers. I was, and that allowed me to then have this conversation with people. Whereas if I didn't have a law degree and I wasn't an attorney, I wonder if I would have been able to have as much of an impact as I had. And I'm looking forward to the day that there are entrepreneurs in the space who are sitting up here, have no formal legal background from an attorney or a lawyer standpoint.
That's great. Let's see what it does.
Yes,
absolutely. You're going to do a demo,
yeah.
And then we're going to take some questions.
Might have a hotspot in it.
Oh, why don't I log in?
So the problem that we focused on was legal research in particular. I think our vision was always the idea of essentially mimicking having a conversation with a super knowledgeable senior partner at a law firm who had extensive experience in a particular area of law. But especially as a junior when I was around, it's not like I could just knock on their door all the time and they'd be like, oh yeah, because the best research experience I had was when someone said, oh, check out this case, check out this, and check out that, and it gave me that kind of basis to go on. It's not connected up front here. So what we did was essentially kind of with that as our ethos, build out Ross. And so I'm going to start with a question. I'll blow it up a little bit more. Let's say, what is the standard for the patentability of business methods, and let's say since 2010. So let's start kind of at the base of what Ross can do, and I'll kind of go from there. So what you'll notice off the jump is you're not doing anything when it comes to kind of Boolean searching, anything like that. You're just simply asking your question to the system. What we do is we look at the entirety of case law in the United States, published and unpublished, and depending on what your parameters are, you can put, in Texas, in Florida, wherever you want. Our system automatically understands you. So at the core of it, it brings back various passages from different pieces of case law. We bring 10 at a time, and then kind of build from there that best answer your query. And when you open one of those cases, you can pop in. We can go into one of the leading cases on it. It pre-highlights all the most important passages from the case, and you're off to the races. So that's kind of us at the base, but now I want to show what we've released recently that's really exciting that builds on that. What we asked ourselves and what we asked our users was, okay, this started to save people 35% of time, 40% of time, which was great. But we asked them, what is kind of the Holy Grail? If you had a magic wand, what would you want a system to be able to do? And they said, well, you know, it depends. The real reason why I'm doing my research can vary. So depending on my procedural posture, maybe I'm preparing a statement of claim, maybe I'm, you know, preparing a defense, maybe I'm doing a motion to dismiss. And it would be really neat if you could bring me the case law and the arguments that I would have to make to be most successful dependent on my procedural posture. You can't do that in any of the other platforms, but if you guys can understand language, can you figure that out? And so that was one thing we kept hearing. And the other thing we kept hearing, which was really fun and a big challenge for us, was, well, it really depends on the facts of my case. So would it be possible to have your system understand the facts that I'm currently in and then be able to bring back on-point information dependent on facts, procedural posture, and your legal issue? And so that's a huge challenge, and I'm proud to say that we've done that and delivered on that, so let me show you what it looks like. The system underneath will ask kind of what's your procedural posture, what are you doing? So I'll add, I'm actually preparing a motion to stay. And then say that you operate in the finance world and you're dealing within a stock market trading algorithm, so stock market trading network. You can add on the facts of your case, and then you just click a button, and it's going to do the same thing. It's going to bring you back its most important passages, but you're going to notice something really fun that it does, and I'll show it to you. Essentially what it's going to start to do is label for you, hey, this is a deep match, and deep match really means it's a match to your legal issues. But if you scroll down, you'll start to see some other cases come up, which is really neat. So you start to see things like motion match. That means that that case matches on your legal issues that you're researching, as well as your procedural posture. And then very fun, you get a case like this Bloomberg case, which is kind of the Holy Grail and why you go in to do this research. It matches on your legal issues. It matches from a motion perspective and your procedural posture, and it also matches on the facts that you're researching. So let's go in and see what that looks like. When you click into the case, it takes you to the most important passage. It tells you and it wants you to read. But on the sidebar here, you can actually pop around and confirm how it matches to facts and how it matches to your procedural posture. So you can go ahead and do that. And this right here has been really used effectively across the board, and now we're hearing we're saving about 80% of time. And I think most importantly, we're starting to hear that we're starting to find on-point relevant authorities that folks otherwise might have missed out on. Because the other platforms, when you go Boolean, or even if you go kind of rudimentary natural language search that they're doing, it doesn't take into account facts, procedural posture, etc. So what you're doing here is you're finding the most relevant on-point pieces of information that you need. Other fun things that we have put into the platform that I'd love to show you, part of, in some of other platforms, they'll have head notes. So just kind of a general overview of a case written by humans that kind of summarizes the main issues in that case. The challenge with head notes generally is that sometimes they can be limited to just 3 or 4 legal issues within that case. They also sometimes are prone to human error because humans wrote them. So what we sought out to do was solve this problem where would it be possible to train AI models to instantly summarize your case in a way that answers your legal research question and why you're even in that case as it pertains to your procedural posture and facts as well. And so we did that and we built that. So if you click this button, it's called Generate Overview. In a very quick amount of time, this comes up. This is completely kind of generated instantly. There's no humans that are in a back room kind of writing this up. And this is pretty amazing because what this is it uses information from the case and various lines from the case with the point and pinpoint, so you can rely on it. You know that it's from the case in a way that best kind of goes to the legal issues that you're researching, and you can interact with them. And that has been something that folks really love as well.
Andrew, can you just tell us what the overview, was it helpful, what the sort of survey does?
Yeah, absolutely. So you'll notice at the bottom, is this overview helpful? Yes or no. One of the ways that our system learns is through direct feedback, such as saying yes and no. Earlier on, that was something that we relied more heavily on, and right now our system kind of takes that into effect. But I don't mean it to show off. Most of the time, folks aren't even saying yes or no because they're finding it to be on point. Another thing, and the rule of demoing a product is you don't want to get lost in all your features and get too excited about them, but I'll break the rule a little bit. Back here, we try to make it really easy to use because generally you have to kind of, this isn't an area where people have a lot of familiarity with tech tools, so it should be, for all the entrepreneurs, I think really we've been trying to build things that are super easy. This button right here, follow this question, when you click that button, what that does is now our system will read every new case that comes out across any of the relevant jurisdictions to your question. And if it has anything to do with what you're researching, you get a ping and it says, hey, you were researching, XYZ. This is a case that just came out. It doesn't have any of the same words that you used in your search query, in any of the facts, etc., but it's relevant and you shouldn't miss out on it. And so what we're mimicking there is just having a whole legal team reading every case for a lawyer or researcher and being able to keep you up to speed. And particularly with solo and small law firms, they're really loving this. We work with some attorney general offices in the United States, and they actually have used this and actually uncovered a bunch of things that end up winning them a pretty big case. And so we're really proud of that as well. Another thing that we built into the system, and I guess I'll probably end with this and then take some questions, is the ability to use past workflow and actually have that inform your current workflow. So from a law firm perspective, this could be something that a really brilliant partner put together 2 years ago, and you're a junior associate and you want to look at it, but it's outdated and you want to know where the law's gone. Or it could even be, opposing counsel sent you something, statement of defense, etc., and you want to be able to use their research essentially almost against them. So what that looks like is let me show you we'll use this document. It's like a Supreme Court from the United States. It's a PDF. It's got hundreds of cases mentioned, cited. You can grab it, go to what we call our document analyzer, pop it in, and what it does is it reads through that document and it pulls out all the different cases that you cited within that document, and it shepherdizes them for you. So immediately, as you can see how quick that is, it says, hey, within this document, there are 28 cases that have received negative treatments. So let's put our hat on if we're at a law firm. Immediately you can see where the law has changed and evolved and where you might want to have to update your arguments in. If this is from opposing counsel, you can start to see where they might have some issues and where you can essentially start your attack. But here's the other fun thing we do. We recreate the text of the document as well within the platform, and say that you're reading through and there's a particular argument or point that you might want to kind of learn more about. So in this case, in upholding this result, the court stressed that the inevitable discovery doctrine is closely related to the independent source doctrine. Well, say that I'm a junior, I don't know what either of those things are, or maybe opposing counsel, I'm super senior, and they're making that argument, and I'm like, that's a stretch, or actually, hey, that's a pretty good point, or whatever that may be. You can highlight the text and click this button, find similar language, and we use our NLP engine there to find wherever else that legal argument or theory or issue had been discussed in any other cases. So really an effective way to just jump right into the proper research stream using that past information. And I'll end with this because I love doing this. When you go into one of these cases that comes up, you can pop it open, you're looking around, and you know what, I don't want to have to read this whole case. It's 50 pages long. I don't want to have to, let me just see quickly if this is on point. I can click that generate overview button, but I didn't get here with a research question. I got here this way. So what you can do is actually almost like having a conversation with the case. You can say, how has the inevitable discovery doctrine been applied? Which is the reason why you're doing your research. Click generate overview, and the system will then summarize the case in a way that answers your question. So, yeah. And it talks about the differences, and it'll highlight that information. So I think one thing that I want to highlight is with artificial intelligence, a lot of people always get really worried it's like the end of lawyers, the end of doctors, the end of everyone. I think you can see that our goal, and we were in Wired magazine, one of our users was interviewed and he said, with the help of Ross, it makes me look like a rock star. And obviously that made us all feel great, but I think that was a really great way to put it. We try to make that solo small law firm lawyer be able to have that effective team and punch above their weight. From a large law firm perspective, they're finding that they really can't charge their clients for time spent on research. And also when you're doing bet-the-company litigation, if our tool can uncover even one insight that you would have otherwise missed out on potentially, or get you to that point quicker, we're causing it and really kind of moving the needle on better overall legal services for clients. And so we see tremendous opportunity. We see ourselves continuing to grow, much like Google started with search and built out an adjoining group of products. I think look out for more from us. And we're really proud about the fact that now our tool is available across every practice area in the United States. And like I said, who knows what the future holds. So thank you all.
Well, of course, when you're ready to announce the Canadian product, you can do so right here. We've got
Actually,
space.
that would be fun to do.
That would be a lot of fun. Questions? We have a whole bunch of questions. So,
yeah, I mean that's the key question. When are you going to try it to Canadian case law?
So the cool thing is,
next year or?
yeah, no, it's not. I don't want to put like a time period on it. It's sooner rather than later. Especially if you look at what we've done, we've now released a few months back into every practice area in the United States. We now have the ability for folks to just actually pop onto the platform and effectively gain use from it without even talking to a human being on our team, because they're getting into the tool and having a really easy time and having that effective usage. So the beautiful thing about machine learning and natural language processing is Ross understands legal language, and it understands how to answer legal research questions within a common law-based system. And so essentially we can plug and play into all different countries in that. And even from a civil law perspective, I did a little bit of that in my past as well, we see tremendous opportunity for what we're doing. We're trying to move as fast as we can. I think the United States was a really great place to start. Just from a sheer numbers point of view, there's more lawyers in the state of New York or the state of California than all of Canada. Yeah. But I think we're really looking forward to a homecoming. And you know what? We'll probably do it at the Legal Innovation.
lots of questions.
So, as somebody who built a lot of hours doing legal research, Ross is a revolutionary tool. So I hope I speak for everyone when I say I really am waiting for the moment it comes to Canada.
Great.
I have two questions. One is, when you uploaded the document onto Ross, what are the confidentiality or cybersecurity issues surrounding that?
Yeah, so we work with banks, government agencies, etc. So a lot of what we've done there is a lot of these tools have been already kind of shared with a court, it's filed, they're publicly available, and none of that stuff gets stored on our servers in the process. So we've been able to pass all those kind of security questionnaires on with that tool.
Okay, great. And my second question is, I know Ross primarily deals with private law firms, but you mentioned that you're also working with some public bodies. Can you give advice to somebody who would be dealing with the public institutions? What are some things what is a piece of advice that you would give?
I think what had worked effectively for us was at the beginning stage saying, look, you have a really long process to be able to make a purchasing decision. Let's start that, but I'll actually provide some of your folks with the tool for free. Let's pass your security audits, et cetera, because they won't work with you until then. But being able to say, let me get you this product in your hands, and only do that when your product's at a stage where they can really get that aha moment. They're not going to be the people you want to necessarily all the time kind of test bed your product, unless you work in, this isn't a plug, with like the Attorney General's Office of Ontario wants to work with startups. So find those outfits that do, and you can work with them. But I'd say effectively a really good trick is, hey, let's use it for free, and then it can kind of speed things up through that very long sales cycle that you work with through government agencies. But they're great, and I think for us, we're starting to see some good traction from those outfits because they're focused on efficiency.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I couldn't really see the screen that clearly from back here, but does the product have a database of statutes?
Yes.
And on top of that, is it possible to, let's say, input a statement of claim and it spits out whatever applicable statute there might be, whether it's pled or not pled?
Yeah, so we do have statutes and regulations from all major states within the platform. That capability is something that you should, that's how we get ideas for different products. What we've built out is that would be something we can do. We already do kind of through these find similar language, you can start to see things from a case law perspective. But yeah, I think that is something, we don't do that yet, but it's very much something that we can do. And actually, Tomas, who's sitting right behind you in the red sweater, is one of the folks on the team who would kind of put that on our roadmap. So there you go.
I would definitely be on the wish list.
Yes.
It was a great demo. Thanks very much. Would you ever include secondary content? And if you did, would it be licensed, or would you ever consider like bespoke content?
So I think secondary sources, what we've traditionally seen, have been something that a lot of people relied on, at least I did as well, because the core search experience was pretty poor. So you wanted to get up to speed on a legal issue so you don't go into those platforms and get lost. So what we're finding is people traditionally have started with tools like Google or a secondary source, gotten the lay of the land, and then popped into their research product. And instead what they're doing with Ross is starting from Ross, kind of pie in the sky questions and getting that information right from the main source. I don't think we're going to count out the possibility of adding on secondary sources, both from a partnership perspective, but also we also envision a world where we could potentially train AI models to start writing different chapters of books and synthesizing across various information points. So not making any promises, but I can say that I think what continues to get us really excited is how can we essentially automate a process and a way of doing something that traditionally not only takes a lot of people, but is also error prone because you have humans in that loop.
There's a question over here?
Oh, no.
No? Okay.
Andrew, is this disrupting or displacing some of the traditional content platform providers, or is it sitting alongside?
It's both. So solo small law firms will generally go with a just Ross option. Large law firms generally have access to both a Lexis or a Westlaw subscription. And what we're seeing now is folks essentially removing one of those two and bringing in Ross. Because generally what they're saying is there's a lot of overlap and similarities between those two platforms. And what we're doing, as you saw, is kind of filling in a lot of what those platforms can't do based off of their technical limitations. And so we're kind of acting in that complementary form from a large law firm perspective. But we also are looking at the ways we just haven't been around long enough as well to be able to effectively go through a multi-year sales cycle on it. But we do see us being able to be the go-to platform that folks use start to finish, and we already are doing that at various law firms.
Sir, at the back. Yeah.
I guess this is kind of building on the last question, but given the risk-averse nature of lawyers and these barriers you have to overcome, how do you go about overcoming the confidence or the trustworthiness of a barrier where lawyers may tap into Ross and then back up and double down on their search on Westlaw or Quick Law, thus keeping their association with those platforms as well?
Yeah, so actually that's something that we continue to face, especially early on as we build our reputation. One thing that we like to tell people is, do things the old way and then do Ross alongside and see if there is a benefit. If there is a benefit to it, obviously that conversation goes quite smoothly. That being said, I do think you're right about the risk aversion, and I think we have seen even in folks that we then have double, triple, quadruple our implementation with them. It started off kind of just dipping their toes in and kind of still doing both. But then once they started seeing that overlap, and also what was interesting was sometimes they would say, but this doesn't have these 3 cases in the top 5 results, and those are the ones I always rely on. And that's interesting because what they started to see is, oh, I actually might have also wanted to be relying on these cases. So we almost had to kind of build that in, and one thing that became important for us is setting expectations and also being upfront and being like, okay, so what you may see is things that you haven't seen, and kind of taking them and walking them through and grabbing folks by the hand and letting them know that happens. I don't think there's any way to hack being a young upstart company in a space that has entrenched incumbents, but I do think, especially now, that we're at the stage where we can say, hey, if you really want to try the product, it's available for free for 14 days. Love it, don't like it, love it, we hope. And one thing that we're excited about is even if there are aspects of it that they don't like, we're getting great feedback on that. So it has gone quite well, but at the beginning stages, you get that at different law firms. And that's why we hope to have like a really strong internal champion or team of champions. And if you have like the law librarian who has 4 decades of experience saying, I love Ross, I'm not going to use X platform ever again, people step 2. Yes?
Just to follow up on that, one of the ways that lawyers learn to find the issues is by reading the cases and reading the cases that don't match, and then knowing next time that there was something out there that they remember vaguely that resembled it. So when you're only reading 1/5 as many cases, how's the cyborg lawyer in the future, the AI assisted one, going to do that? Do we need to change the way we train the law schools teach, or that we train the young lawyers to reflect the way that they'll now be getting their research done?
So I almost see 2 questions in that. I see one is really about, with the new tools such as Ross and some awesome companies that are even in this space, I think can have huge impacts. What are we going to do from an educational standpoint? And the other question I hear is really around not just the educational, but from a training standpoint, are they going to be as trained and as insightful if they don't have that same experience? And so, a couple things. One thing I would say is people made a similar argument when case law and statutes and regulations got digitized, and folks said, if you don't know where something is in a library, you're not going to be able to be as effective researcher as I am versus the person who just started using Alexa CD. And so we've seen that before and things worked out. But I think a better analog generally to that one is almost what you saw with engineers with slide rulers and the calculator. There was a lot of debate, and I think even when should students be able to have a calculator in math exams and at what level, that caused a big hoopla. And what ended up happening, I think, is arguably the calculator led to further kind of development and freed things up, and I don't think people forgot how to add. That being said, I don't think that takes away from the second part of the question, which is the training has to change. I think it does. I think it's more what we need to anticipate is having and making it okay for law school students to talk about technology and to talk about other ways of doing things. And it sounds crazy, but it's almost like you have to it's a safe space to talk about legal innovation. And I love my law school. My alma mater was the University of Saskatchewan, and they had a very innovative kind of atmosphere, but we didn't have formal legal technology courses. So I didn't learn that through a course that I could have taken. And I do see that happening in various universities, both in Canada and abroad. I've been guest lecturing at a variety of different great colleges, and you see that. But I do think that there has to be a reimagining of that. And I don't think we fundamentally need to throw out everything that's there. But I do think that there has to be a rethinking of what are the skills that you need to be a successful lawyer. And I almost would say the cyborg thing and the robot lawyer thing, you see that a lot in the headlines. We're already tied so much to every device in our life. I can't go I'm getting anxiety because I haven't checked my cell phone since I started talking. So the idea that we're gonna we're cyborg, we already are cyborgs, and we were even in the age of fax and email, etc. So I don't see that large displacement coming from this new technology. The analog I see there is kind of like ATMs, automated teller machines, and I used this example earlier this morning too. I mean, if you were a teller and you heard that there's a machine called the automated teller machine, you'd be like, that's the worst machine in the world, At least our tool's called Ross. It's not called automated research machine, you know what I mean? But the cool thing that happened with ATMs is that for every ATM that got installed, it actually led to more tellers being hired. And the reason why that was, it brought down the cost of starting a bank branch, and it democratized banking. So that it didn't just look like you had to walk into a space, be an old white dude, and someone say, hi there, Mr. Sampson, how's the wife and kids? Right this way, because they know you. What ended up happening is everyone got a bank account, and it became something that there was a lot more convenience. We didn't have to wait on Fridays to pull cash for the weekend. And I see that as what legal innovation is going to do in our space. Everyone needs access to good legal representation. The tools we're using and the way we're delivering that needs to be reimagined and reprocessed. But I don't think lawyers are going anywhere, and I think we're going to have more lawyers in the future, which for some might be a scary thought.
You got time for one more question? Lots of hands. Sir.
You just started touching on it at the end, but can you talk a bit about how Ross and tools like Ross can help improve access to justice?
Yeah. So a couple things. One thing that the way that we see our tool working from a solo small law firm standpoint is that it's adding that firepower, and it's making more of a battle of wits rather than battle of resources. So that was always a challenge that I had at my small law firm. You know, we didn't have a team of 20 associates that were going to research every possible way to argue something. So I see from our perspective doing that. But in this room, there are entrepreneurs at a variety of different companies, and I think by the act of scaling out what a lawyer can do, it's going to lead to that opening of of this untapped market of people who have money, but don't have the money that in today's rates to pay for it, and also don't have the awareness of that they can go to a lawyer, that their issue is even legal. So I think we need better marketing as an industry, and not in just the niche things that we do with like billboards for just certain types of law. And also, we've been big proponents at Ross of giving away our technology for free to any organization that's pushing the needle on A to J. So we were the first amongst two companies, it was us and another company, that the American Bar Association, we founded something called Legal Tech for a Change with them. We were founding partners. And any group can contact them, and they very short form, and they gain access to our tool for free. It's amazing that a lot of these organizations who are really fighting the good fight, a lot of their overhead goes to paying for their research tools as well as other things, and I think that's completely wrong, and we can all do better there. And so even the tools that are being incubated here, I know a lot of them are really passionate about that, so I do see us being able to essentially scale lawyers. And you saw that already in other things. One of the topics we always talk about is, the cloud has allowed you to spin up a company quite effectively. You don't need a room full of servers and people doing that. And I think being able to have a lawyer on their own, be able to effectively do the work of 6 today, next year, is a dream.
And on that note, join me with a big round of applause for Andrew. You're so generous.